started?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the next edition of the ICWA Coffee Talk series. Today we're going to be talking about the provision inquiry. My name is Sommer Rosette. I work with the ICWA unit as well as the SSIS training team, both with the Child Welfare, Safety, and Permanency. A couple of things before we get started. As I mentioned, we're going to use the Q&A feature today to ask questions. But first, before we get into the questions, we're going to go over a quick PowerPoint presentation. Then we'll move on to the presentation does include a short video, and then we'll move into the Q&A. For all the questions, please, I'll point out again, please use your Q&A feature, and any questions that we don't get to today, if we run out of time or if there's just an overabundance of questions, which we're hoping we get, we will answer those questions in a follow-up email. Before I jump into the presentation, I'd like to go ahead and allow the panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves. If you guys don't mind, I'm just going to call you as you show up on my screen. So we'll start with Eric.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Kratt, and I'm the SSIS training lead here at the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy, as well as an SSIS liaison with the Division of Child Safety and Permanency at the Department of Human Services. You all probably know me or heard of me at other SSIS mentor coffee talks. So I'll leave it at that, and I will turn it over to Cindi Miller.
Good morning, everyone. This is Cindi Miller. I'm an ICWA compliance consultant with DHS. I have been there about 2.5 years. And prior to that, I worked for the Mille Lacs Band for about 5 years. And I've been doing ICWA work, probably 21 years now in some form or another. Thanks.
Thanks, Cindi. How about Carrie?
Reanna Ishtama zewe makiapi, Tita Winta Hamataha, Omaha Oyate. Welcome to Pashuta Sapa time. I wanted to greet you in the Dakota language because the Dakota language is one of the indigenous languages to Minnesota, and it brings a whole new life to the presentation here. What I said was good morning to all of you. My name is Iron Eyes Woman. My English name is Carrie Owen, and I live in Prairie Island, and I'm enrolled in the Omaha tribe of Nebraska. I've been living in Minnesota for years. I'm an ICWA compliance consultant, and prior to that, I've been working at DHS for a couple years, and prior to that, I worked in child protection, been in ICWA for years and years, and welcome to Coffee Time, ICWA Coffee Time.
Must be me.
Thanks, Carrie. Yep, Richie.
Hey, bonjour, this is Richie. That means hello, good morning in Ojibwe. Just want to say I'm with DHS. I'm an ICWA compliance consultant. I've been in the judicial branch, or before I worked in the court system for over 20 years. So I'm glad that you guys are here, and we can hopefully talk about inquiry. I hope you guys have some good questions.
Thanks, Richie. Ann?
Morning, everybody. I'm Ann Manybirds. I'm the Native American Policy Consultant on the ICWA unit, and I'm an enrolled member at the Sistine Wahpeton Oyate in South Dakota.
Thanks, Ann. Dan?
Ihani Washte, good morning. Reanna Jacobs, I'm the ICWA Supervisor with the ICWA unit. I'm an enrolled member with Chanshe Ape, also known as Lower Sioux Indian Community, and welcome.
Thank you so much. And Heidi?
Oh, good morning, everybody. I apologize for the delay. I had myself on mute. Welcome again to this morning's coffee talk. My name is Heidi Morris. I am the SSIS Mentor Program Coordinator, and we're happy to have all of you here, and thank you for letting me be a part of this. I hope you enjoy today's session.
Thanks, Heidi. All right. So before we get into questions, we're going to go through this presentation quickly. Let me get to the next screen. There we go. All right, everybody, welcome. One of the main things that we wanted to portray to everybody and instill in everybody about inquiry, one of these the statement comes from the 2007 Tribal State Agreement. The best interest of Indian children are inherently tied to the concept of belonging. Belonging can only be realized for Indian children by recognition of the values and ways of life of a child's tribe or tribes. Best interests of an Indian child are interwoven with the best interest of the Indian child's tribe.
And I want to interject one thing in there. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Richie, that's how I would prefer you do it. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say that without no children, there are no tribes. So that's why it's the best interest. The tribes are always looking to keep their children, because if there's no children, there are no tribes. So that's the best interest. Just keep that in mind. It's one of the bigger things.
Yep, they are the foundation. Thanks, Richie. Is there anything anybody else would like to add before I move on? All right. Okay, so one of the questions we get is, when does ICWA-MIFPA apply? As you can see, the work groups on the left where it states applies, these are the work groups and programs and services that ICWA and MIFPA applies. And then on the right-hand side, the ones that they don't apply to. However, ICWA and MIFPA doesn't apply on these right-hand side because they're medical and not social service systems. As you can see, there are a list of the on the list that has applies, the adolescent independent living skills, adoption, guardianship. We get a lot of questions on whether or not ICWA-MIFPA applies to chemical dependency and the children's mental health. So we think it's important that everybody understands which work groups and program services apply to where ICWA and MIFPA apply. Okay, so inquiry is to be conducted with all children who enter social services, regardless of presumed race or ethnicity, and regardless of the child welfare service type. And it's only through inquiry that workers discover the tribal lineage. By making those continuous efforts with inquiries, connection to a child's tribe are made, and it makes it a lot easier and can result in a better outcome for those children. There could be those additional services that the tribes offer as well. This is where we'd like to go ahead and play a short video. This video itself will give you the idea, or excuse me, it presents the benefit of inquiry. You never know unless you ask if there's tribal heritage or if there's native heritage. So I'm going to get this video started. 1 second. If there's anything anybody would like to add, you can on the panel here, you can go ahead and add while I get this video up.
And the reason why we inquire like that is because the children have political status to that tribe. We want to make sure they have it. Any child could, any child, it's like when you're American citizens, an American citizen can look like anyone. It's called political status. Just like for the tribe, they each have a criteria for meeting their citizenship. So keep that in mind.
Okay, we're going to play the video really quick. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Judge Len Edwards. I'm very familiar with the Indian Child Welfare Act. That act, passed by Congress in 1978, was an attempt to save Native American children from the dominant society. At that time, Native American children were being removed from their homes at a rate 19 times the rate of all other children. And over 80% of those children were placed in non-Indian homes or placements. The Indian culture was being destroyed by the dominant culture. And so the Indian Child Welfare Act was put in place to try to maintain relations between Indian children and their tribes, their culture, their heritage. This is a very important piece of legislation. It's important for judges to understand it, for attorneys to know it, for social workers to practice under its mandates. It is the law in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And enforcement has been challenging. And we're going to talk to you about that enforcement today to make sure that the spirit and letter of the law from the Indian Child Welfare Act is followed by all of us who work in the child protection system.
We want our children and all children to receive the best and most appropriate care. This means we need to identify all the American Indian and Alaskan Native descendants in our care.
When we talk about Indian country, we're always looking away from California. We're looking to Oklahoma, Arizona, the Dakotas, Utah, Colorado. But really, you know, when you're in California, you're in Indian country. We have the largest number of federally recognized tribes of all the states except for Alaska. And San Diego County has the largest number of federally recognized tribes of any county in the country. So truly we are an Indian country. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge it and that we take seriously and responsibly our obligation to the children that are here from our local tribes and the children who are here because of the federal relocation policies that brought their families out here looking for a better life.
Reservations could not absorb the returning servicemen and women and the people who came back from war industries. The economies of the reservations could not absorb them, so the relocation program started, and a lot of those natives were shipped out here to relocation centers with one-way tickets. And that didn't work out real well because essentially they came away from their families, and what you have is now large urban ghettos, which is the reason that we have the highest Native American population in California, is essentially because of relocation and all the displaced people.
The whole idea of the relocation program was to take the Indian off of the reservation and assimilate him into the mainstream of society. In the Los Angeles area, about 60% remained in the area after they were brought to LA. About 40% returned to the reservation or Indian communities where they came from. So you had to learn to assimilate, or you didn't make it.
Many descendants have only bits and pieces of information, sometimes passed along with quiet dignity, often with the longing to know more about their heritage. What information was passed along may have been shrouded in shame or secrecy for unknown reasons, resulting in reluctance to share the information. The number of families that are disconnected from their ancestral homeland grows exponentially each generation.
Essentially, it creates gaps in a human being to not know who they are, where they're from, or what their responsibilities are. You know, being Native is something that requires you to be responsible. You have responsibilities to your people, to the land you come from, to upholding traditions, and to not know that, I think it leaves people with a giant hole sort of in their soul. And people, it's one thing to say, okay, well, we can feed and clothe people, which is essential, but ultimately people, what makes people human is what's inside them, what's inside their soul, and how they adjust themselves to right and wrong, and what are their responsibilities as human beings. And you learn that from your people. And if you don't have that, then you're just kind of stuck out there, and it's hard.
If nobody asks if a young person or a family member has Indian heritage, there's no way that the court can make the determinations it needs to make and to comply with ICWA. And without that compliance, a young person is never going to feel that connection to their broader tribal community, and there's going to always be that sense of void.
We should not make assumptions that just because we're potentially intervening in someone's life in an urban setting, that rules them out from Indian ancestry.
Every county has at least one American Indian child. And if they have at least one American Indian child, then it's an issue for every county.
Many individuals find connection to Native American communities through intertribal, regional, and local cultural events. These community events enable a sense of belonging and kinship and provide support for resilience through access to programs such as Title VII, Indian Education, and Tribal TANF that do not require proof of enrollment.
Social workers and probation officers who are able to access tribal services for their children and families that they didn't have access to before. For instance, they may have other kids in their caseload where they're waiting for a slot for a physical exam or a dental exam, but the children that they have who are tribal, they're able to get into Indian clinics and be seen, right away.
In California, we strive to increase the percentage of American Indian children placed with Indian caregivers. Here are some ways to help identify those American Indian and Alaska Native children you encounter. Encourage social workers, intake workers to state, rather than ask, if you are an American Indian, Alaska Native, or believe you may be affiliated with a tribe, there are additional services, ICW, that are available to you. Talking to that family historian may yield a lot of information. Ask them, who are the keepers of the family history? Usually there is one family member or a few who are gifted in this area. Consider asking if they also have ever utilized Native American services, or if anyone has in the family. Remember to continue to cultivate and build trust-based communications with children and families, and continue to ask if they have American Indian, Alaska Native ancestry throughout the life of the case. Document all your efforts of inquiry and document all you do to achieve proper inquiry and notice. Today we encourage the following spirit of ICW, which supports culturally appropriate services to American Indian and Alaska Native child regardless of their status with federally recognized tribe. It supports services to children who may be descendants of enrolled tribal members, as well as members and descendants of terminated or non-recognized tribes. Good social work practice means keeping an American Indian and Alaska Native child connected to their cultural traditions and tribal identity. It is important to ask every family and every child if they have American Indian, Alaska Native ancestry, even though they may not look as though they have American Indian, Alaska Native ancestry.
These are the young people who are going to grow up to be our teachers, our ICWA workers, our counselors, our spiritual people. You don't know. So, we want the best for our children and to give them that opportunity to be the person they're meant to be.
All right. I apologize
So
if the video. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add some pieces to this. I know that throughout the video, you can hear them talking about California. And the reason for that is we attended a national NICWA conference a couple years ago. And this video was played in one of the breakout sessions that we went to on inquiry. And so we thought this was really valuable. So we asked them to borrow this. And we know that, you know, it was about California and stuff, but you can tell in here that a lot of the issues that they have, a lot of the things that they brought up are also things that we have here in Minnesota. And also like some of the dancing and the regalia, of course, would look different because Minnesota has different tribes, but it gets to the point very well about inquiry. So we asked to borrow this and they said that we could borrow it. I just wanted to explain that because it talks about California a lot in here, so.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. All right, so yeah, the benefit of the video is to show that you never know who might be Native, you know, just by the way they look. So it's really important that inquiry that you ask early on.
And on another side, just to look
right.
the opposite way, if someone looks like they're Native American, you say they are, they might not, the tribe might say they're not. So let's keep that in mind too. I mean, you have to inquire and see, and then bring it to the tribe, and the tribe determines membership. That's why it's so important.
Thanks, Richie.
And also to understand, I think
Sorry, Carrie.
Oh, also to understand, I think they explained that a little bit about why someone might not know. They might like have some inclination that they are affiliated to a tribe, but they might not have all the information. And it tells you some of the reasons why that might happen. With the Indian Relocation Act, people were moved to different places. Chicago, they talked about LA, they talked about Minnesota, Minneapolis. So some of that history was lost in families, so they might not have it. And that's why it's important to ask and to act whenever a family or a child says that they are that they have some reason to believe that they're affiliated to a tribe.
And you have to remember, like when you're inquiring with a family member, sometimes they're not going to tell you that they are affiliated to the American tribe because maybe their grandma was sent to a boarding school all their life. They were told their Indian was bad. They've seen their parents. I remember back when I grew up, you didn't say you were Indian. You just didn't say that because there'd be consequences for that. And they'd call you like an Indian. I remember being called the Indian giver because they say, you gave us this land, now you want it back. You know, these are the things that are constantly in our minds and what we're thinking of. And it affects you. So you got to remember, like when you ask someone that question, you need to have empathize with them and make sure that they know. They might say no at the first time, but you need to build that relationship. I mean, even my own grandma was sent to a boarding school. I mean, they were sent away, and that's the way it was. The only good thing about my dad, he got sent to Red Wing one time because he was Indian. He said, I got sent away, but he was with Bob Dylan. And, you know, Bob Dylan, they say, he sang the song, The Walls of Red Wing. And the second time he got sent to Red Wing, he said, I deserve to go there. But the first time he was just American Indian and he got sent there. So just keep that in mind. Those are things that happen in life. And these are the things when you're trying to build a relationship as a social worker, you need to keep that in thought because there's lots of things that the history through our generations that affected us.
Thanks, Richie. So inquiry begins at intake and can continue through the life of the case. Inquiry begins at intake with the person requesting services or filing a report. This sets the case as an ICWA case. In motion. Workers will use inquiry will also inquire with parents, fathers, custodians, immediate and extended family, if there's other appropriate people. Another thing too is it can continue through the life of the case, even through assessment and case management. And inquiring with those mentioned keeps you in compliance and most importantly, preserves and maintains an Indian child's family. So just a quick look at the ICWA screens here. So for the inquiry tab, it is under the client node and in the ICWA folder. Then you go into the eligibility determinations folder. Once you're in there, the second tab is the ICWA inquiry. As you can see, you need to complete whether you've inquired with the adoptive mother, or excuse me, child's bio or adoptive mother, child's bio or adopted father, if there was ever an Indian custodian, if you were able to inquire with the child, or excuse me, with the child or a child's extended family. The red exclamation mark in line will indicate that this is a mandatory field that needs to be completed. And anything that has the blue underlined text is help text, or you can click on it and it will provide some additional information regarding that specific area.
I do want to add something to this portion too, please. That it's important to fill out those tabs, but I also want to really emphasize that those are yes and no questions and they need to be asked for that. But we also, for inquiry, we also need that to be in SSIS chronology, because this is the quantitative data that's needed, but we also need the qualitative data. So we need who they talked to, when they talked to this person, what they said about what tribal affiliation they were. And we need to find that, we usually find that in the chronology notes in your SSIS. And we are looking for those usually in initial interviews that you have with the family or any kind of conversation you have with the schools. So we're looking for that information in there.
And like Carrie said, always put inquiry in, write inquiry when you're doing an SSIS notes, because it has to have the date in there. That's the one thing that you need. You have to have that date. When we're doing the compliance review, you have to have that date. With the other system, the other one that you just shown, there's no date to place in there, so it's really hard for us to determine when you ask that that individual.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, you want to document who you spoke with and reason for contact. When they mentioned the date, here's in the chronology notes. In the comments, you could list here that this was a inquiry with mother regarding or for ICWA. I think you guys covered everything. It's just important to make sure you list who you spoke with and any type of result that you got from that call or that contact.
I know some of the best practices that some counties are doing that it's really helpful is when they're doing their SSIS chronology notes, they're even putting a little title on it saying inquiry, so that when we're looking through chronology notes and we see that inquiry like in bold letters or whatever, we know then to go there and find where that inquiry was done and with whom it was done and what date. So thank you for that. That's just a suggestion.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the Q&A here. As you can see, we already got some questions in Q&A, so we'll start with the first one. We will answer questions in order received. Just a friendly reminder that today our topic is ICWA, so if we can keep the questions to that topic. If there's any time left at the end and we don't have any additional inquiry questions, then we may open it to questions outside of inquiry. If we don't get to everybody's questions, we will provide a transcript of the questions so that everybody has the Q&As from today's session. So we're going to go ahead and turn to the the first question here. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read it here. So first question. I have a current facility investigation where the family has bio children, adoptive, and 2 in foster care. I know how to fill in the eligibility tabs for the bio children and adoptive children, but which options would I pick for the foster children? And how would I properly fill out the active efforts tab? Okay, so the active efforts tab question we can.
That's a really good question. And I am stumped. First of all, I don't know if the family's 2 children are in foster care, so they're outside of the home, or if they're fostering 2 children. So I apologize that I have to ask that clarifying question. And if any of our panelists want to chime in as well to help clear that up for me, that would be great.
No, I think we would need the additional information that you asked it's kind of vague, so it's hard to answer that question.
Okay.
Let's come back to that question.
We like
Okay.
questions like that. It's good to stump us on those questions like that. So we want that, and we'll get you that answer and stuff like that.
Okay, second question. If a tribe responds in an email stating the child is ICWA eligible, should a copy of that email be filed with the court? Or is it sufficient documentation, or is it sufficient to document the information in the SW court report?
What we've discussed about this, we want the determination letter saying that this child is eligible or ineligible from the tribe. So that's what you need to have. You need to get that documentation from the tribe stating that.
But I think they're asking about the courts, and I think that's something you would have to work out with your county on what they want or what the court needs. So we can't make that. We can't tell you what the court wants or what the court needs for that. It would really be up to them.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'll go ahead and get to the next question. Regarding data privacy and inquiry, I've understood we are to inquire about Native American heritage when you have non-custodial parents not a part of the household for which the county is working. It feels like a data privacy violation for county staff to contact the non-custodial, non-household member and/or parent and complete the inquiry. Does statute permit us to tell non-custodial parent of our involvement with the family in order to complete the inquiry? Where is that in statute? Thank you. Statute, excuse me, thank you.
So this is Reanna Jacobs, and I'll just speak a little to this. So the federal law and our state statute aren't necessarily, they don't speak to this specific situation. However, it is a requirement to inquire with both parents, regardless of non-custodial, non-household membership. You're not going to know about Indian affiliation or tribal affiliation, heritage, without asking both.
Reanna, when they do ask or when they inquire, the second part of the question is, are they allowed to share information about why they're asking? And if so, I would assume they're wanting to know about the detail they share. I guess I shouldn't make assumptions, sorry.
Right. So in this situation, I would say, just in terms of best practices, right? If you have a non-custodial parent and you're working with a family who's come to the attention of the local social service agency, I'm not sure why you wouldn't involve the non-custodial parent, given that they could be a potential support to the family, just in terms of case practice and case goals and support, for the entirety of the family. In terms of providing information about what's going on with the other parent who's come to the attention of the local social service agency, I would seek out your attorney to get clarification on what you want or can share.
This is Cindi, I would say that in the cases that I recall being involved in, that the non-custodial parent was usually notified of what's going on because they could be a potential placement for the child. So it would be unusual for them not to know what's going on.
You always have to ask the mom, the dad, inquire with Indian custodian, extended family, or other appropriate people. Could be even a teacher. You have to give information to the teacher. Just ask if you know if little Johnny is affiliation to any American Indian tribe.
All right. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. If the county workers or social workers have open SSIS work groups in which they document the DD casework or Min Choices assessment work, are they still required to do inquiry?
So this is Reanna Jacobs again. And I will say that if the local social service agency is providing case management services, that the response is that yes, you do inquiry. If you're providing child welfare services or case management, if you're providing like an assessment to acquire services, you don't necessarily need to do inquiry at that time. However, best practice would of course be to do an inquiry with the family. However, when you do start services, you know, within 7 days of those services, you would, follow MIFPA and provide that notice to the tribe once tribal determination or tribal affiliation has been identified.
Thank you, Reanna. Okay, so we have one from, we have another question here. It's fairly large. So here we go. I am in the family assessment unit. I have a family who has identified having past Native American heritage with several possible tribes. I have sent out notices, but have not received responses from most of the tribes yet. The two that I have received responses from were not eligible for membership. The case is open in court, and the case has been identified as an ICWA case due to the pending responses. I am unsure how to answer the ICWA tabs in SSIS, as there has been no response from a tribe identifying that ICWA does apply. The case is being transferred to an ongoing worker, but my case cannot be closed until the ICWA tabs are complete. How do I answer the questions in SSIS, as the court has identified this as an ICWA case, but I am unable to list the tribe with a response of ICWA does apply, which is needed? Would I say that ICWA does not apply, close my case, and have the ongoing monitor the responses to see if that needs to be changed?
Well, the first part, ICWA does apply for that case until you get a determination from those tribes. At that point, I can answer that. The rest will have to be for the SSIS team to answer that, but ICWA does apply until you hear back from the tribe. Tribes are not required to answer back either, so keep that in mind, especially regarding MIFA notice.
So this is Reanna Jacobs again. I would also concur with Richie, and then that should be reflected in SSIS. So you continue to respond or continue to enter data into SSIS that ICWA does apply until you've received all tribal determinations back that ICWA does not apply. Then you would go back and change that potentially. However, in this case, you would enter the data that yes, ICWA is applicable.
And then for the time being in SSIS, there is no way to indicate that the status of those responses is pending. So those categories or those tribal containers have to remain blank, and you will continue to have that person level data cleanup, but it should not prevent you from closing the work group at that person level. However, in release 21.1, which will be released in SSIS at the end of February, there will be an option to select pending under those containers if you have not heard back from the tribe at the time that you need to close your case.
And there will be, we can create a job aid to identify that additional drop-down menu. I mean, it'll be pretty apparent. Oops.
And that's so important to keep doing active efforts if you've not received back from the tribe saying they're ICWA yet, because you don't want to find out like 3-4 months later that this tribe now they respond that they are ICWA. So you want to be doing the ICWA work as you're going along and wait till you hear back from that tribe. It makes it so much easier. It's one of the foundations. Inquiry is one of the foundations of ICWA. If you don't want to find out a year and a half later that this child is Native American. It's not good for the tribes, it's not good for the child or the counties.
All right, thanks everyone. Okay. Okay, I just want to confirm that I heard or saw the slide correctly regarding programs where ICWA and MIFPA apply. It looked like min choices and waivers do not need to inquire or do MIFPA notices. Our agency was previously informed that programs did have to follow MIFPA and complete the screens in SSIS. Please clarify. I think I know what slide they're referring to. This is the slide they're referring to.
I think that goes back to Reanna's previous response about when in a min choices situation, when you're doing the assessments for services, it's not necessarily required. However, when case management starts, best practice would be to reach out to the tribe and follow the provisions of ICWA. And then there was a second part to that question. Sorry, I lost it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be best practice. It would be required.
It would be required.
That you follow. Yeah.
That actually, that answers the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Making sure we're sticking the inquiry here.
And also just to
okay,
help
so
you,
the next.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say the next question is related to the pending determination. So Eric just mentioned that, so we're going to move on to the next one. If you inquire with parents and children and all deny any Native American heritage, must we still reach out to extended family?
I would say yes, you should ask extended family. I mean, that's one of the things what we're looking at. You got to remember, like sometimes they maybe like they don't trust you yet, and you need to be asking. But you need to document that you did ask, and then that's good. Then you want to document that you did ask if they were affiliated to the American tribe, especially if they say like, no, we're not enrollable into that tribe. That sure would make it an ICWA case because the parents or the members, they don't decide if they're American Indian. The tribe decides membership. So keep that in mind. They say they are not enrollable into like the Red Lake tribe, then that would make them ICWA, and you would need to send. You need to that definitely be an ICWA case. Then they do not determine membership. The tribe determines membership for inquiry.
I think just to add on to that too, like if you have reason to believe, and maybe you've talked to the parents and the child, but they said, no, we're not. But yet you're seeing all these things. Maybe there's Native items in the house, or they're involved with Indian education at the schools, then yeah, you would be obligated to reach out to other people, other family members, others as in school, whoever, to continue asking. And as you establish and build that trusting relationship with the family, to continue to do that inquiry.
Just to touch base going on inquiry, like if you had a case that was closed, if you had a case open and then it closed like 3 months and then opens up like 2 months later, you have to inquire again. That's one of the things that we just want to note that. Inquiry, I know it sounds redundant, but we need to inquire again if it's a brand new case and go in that route.
Even if in the case prior, maybe they were open with the case and they told you they were Red Lake, and then it closes and opens up again. Even if you know what tribe they said prior, you still have to do inquiry again. And in the state of Minnesota, tribes are being really creative in the way that they're taking care of their children under the enrollment and membership. They're also changing enrollment and membership requirements. Red Lake just changed theirs recently, which opened up a whole new number of kids that were eligible for enrollment or membership.
And the reason why Red Lake did that because they're running out. Red Lake is running low, and so they opened up that membership now, and so now the tribe has become bigger now. Where cases where we used to do in Hennepin County where they said they're Red Lake affiliated, they weren't eligible. There was terminations. Now all those kids, they would be ICWA eligible and they're eligible enrolled. It's really creative how Red Lake did that. So it's a great thing they did actually. Other tribes could pursue it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next question regarding inquiry. If the mother refuses to disclose who the biological father is case noting that sufficient? Is noting that in case notes sufficient?
Well, I think it would be beneficial for you to, and best practice for you definitely to document that in an SSIS. And then again, when you're talking to other family members, really asking them, inquiring with them about, more about the American Indian heritage of that child. If it's through the father, if it's through whoever, but asking people in the family. A lot of times there's certain family members that have that history, as the video earlier that we watched indicated. So yeah, making sure you document that is going to be key in the case for inquiry.
If you don't document, that the father is unknown, then, how do we know? Maybe you forgot to ask the father. So it's really important to document the fact that the mother is not disclosing who the father is. Hopefully at some point when he is disclosed, then he can be asked at that time. But documentation is really critical.
And just a quick story here with inquiry. I had a case where the judge wanted to terminate parental rights on this family member, and the grandma had the children, and she wanted to do a TLC, and the grandma didn't believe in TPRs, and no one had inquired the father. No one had went and talked. The case had been open for a year, and by building a relationship with that grandma, finding out that the father lived like in not less than a few blocks away, then no one had asked the father for inquiry. I was able to reach out to that father and inquire, and he did have tribal affiliation, and that in turn turned from a termination of parental rights to a TLC, because the judge was determined to terminate rights, but once he found out it was an ICWA case, he decided to do a TLC. So it's very important to build a relationship and find out where these parents are. That'd be active effort.
I just want to return to a question that Janice asked about the new pending feature, because the second part of her question was she was wondering if there would be a warning message that pops up that says, that there are still some ICWA determinations in pending status. And I looked it up, and the answer to that question is yes, there will be a warning message that says that you have indicated that ICWA applies. However, there are pending statuses, so to speak. So I just wanted to follow up with Janice on that question.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Next question. What is the turnaround time for us to hear back from tribes? What if we do not get an official notice back, but the tribe is working with the case already? What date should we use for determination? What is the turnaround time for us to hear back from tribes? What if we do not get an official notice back, but the tribe is working with case already? What date
This seems like
should we
more of a
use for?
a notice question. I'm not sure what that has to do with inquiry, because with inquiry, you're just asking the parents, the child, the custodian, if they have Native American heritage. So if you're talking about a MIF or ICWA notice, that's something different, which we're going to talk about in, I guess our next meeting will be about MIF notice in 2 weeks. Unless we want to answer that now, guys, I don't know.
Well, in a MIFPA notice, you don't have to, I guess we can answer it now, unless there's other inquiry questions, because I really want to get to inquiry questions too. Okay.
Oh, inquiry right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a parent stating that they think they could be Blackfoot, not Blackfeet, but they have no region or no further info. Should we still send to Blackfeet?
Yes, I would
Okay.
send to both.
Yep. Even an example of the Minnesota tribes, if they say they're Ojibwe, then you'd send all, you would send to the Ojibwe tribes. I'm sorry, I jumped in the MIFPA notes a little bit. It gets tied together.
Yeah, it did, yeah. Does this inquiry pertain to family assessments and investigations where there may not be a placement or ongoing services that will be provided? It pertains, yeah.
Yeah.
To all cases.
You always inquire.
Yes.
It doesn't hurt.
So the rest of that question states, most of the time we do not have releases to speak to extended family during this time to inquire with them. And we cannot even confirm or deny that a case is even open with the family.
Well, you're not telling them about the case. You're just asking if this child has any tribal affiliation. So you're just asking that information. You don't have to say them anything else. Just asking if this child is affiliated.
Okay, so I want to be very cautious of the time. It is 10:57. I want everybody, I got a lot of questions in chat whether or not the PowerPoint will be made available, and yes, it will. I also wanted to point out the resource page and let you know that these links will be available in the PowerPoint once you receive it. And then for any questions that you have, any additional policy questions, this is where you would want to send those questions to the ICWA email. And we are keeping a digest of all these questions, and we'll be responding to the remaining questions in the chat. And everybody, our Q&A feature, and everybody will be, we will send these out to everybody that's attended. I believe they may be posted on the SSIS resource page, possibly, but let me turn to Eric or Heidi about that one. You know if the Q&A questions will be posted to the resource page along with the PowerPoint?
I know that the PowerPoint is usually posted on the resource page because it contains SSIS information. But in terms of the Q&As that remain in the Q&A chat feature, that's something we may have to discuss offline. And
okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Regarding inquiry for the MIFPA ICWA checklist, document 5224, that's a great tool to be using for inquiry. It'll help you guys out, especially on the field, you know who to ask and stuff. So I just recommend using that regarding ICWA inquiry, and actually all the other 6 provisions, but start off, since we're just talking about inquiry, that's a great tool to use. The caseworker checklist, document 5224.
Along with the ICWA MIFPA desk aid, That's something that we keep by our desks all the time. It's a very useful tool.
So in inquiry, always ask and document that you did ask, and so we can find it. And if you're putting in SSIS, like Carrie said, just mark it like inquiry, and then we'll be able to find it. Then we don't have to reach out to you guys when we're doing the compliance review saying, hey, we can't find inquiry. We can usually find it that way. It's a lot easier for everyone.
So before we close out here, is there anything the panelists would like to say before we close out for the day?
No, just that we added on, instead of doing this every month as a team, we decided to do this every other week so that we could get information out faster. And then we'll be figuring out if we're going to continue them and what topics, based on the information we get back or the questions we get back, what we might include as topics for the next ICWA Coffee Talks. Thank you so much for your good questions, and thank you all on the panel.
I would also like to apologize once again for the misinformation about starting at